In the dim, echoing halls of the county courthouse, where justice was supposed to be blind but often wore a smirk, sat Eleanor Hayes, a frail woman in her late 60s. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing floors and folding laundry for pennies, clutched a worn envelope containing the last remnants of her late husband's life insurance claim. Widowed just 6 months after his sudden heart attack, Eleanor had scrimped every dime to fight the insurance company's denial, arguing it was a covered event. The courtroom buzzed with the low hum of fluorescent lights and the shuffle of papers, but Eleanor's world narrowed to the imposing figure on the bench, Judge Harlan Thorpe, a man known for his sharp tongue and sharper biases against the underprivileged. As she stood to present her case, her voice trembled but held firm, recounting the nights she'd spent alone, the bills piling like snowdrifts, and the promise her husband had made to protect their modest home. The judge leaned back, his leather chair creaking like a warning, and scanned her threadbare dress and trembling lips with thinly veiled disdain. Judge Thorpe's courtroom was a theater of intimidation, where the gavel fell not just on cases but on dreams deferred. Eleanor detailed the policy's fine print, her words measured and earnest, backed by a single notarized letter from the family doctor. The insurance lawyer, slick in his pinstriped suit, had already painted her as a greedy opportunist chasing a payout she didn't deserve. But it was Thorpe's reaction that cut deepest. As Eleanor paused to catch her breath, the judge let out a chuckle, a low, rumbling sound that rippled through the room like a stone skipped across still water. "Mrs. Hayes," he drawled, adjusting his glasses with manicured fingers, "do you really expect this court to believe that after 40 years of manual labor, your husband left you with anything worth this charade? It's almost comical." The gallery shifted uncomfortably, a few stifled gasps, but no one dared interrupt. Eleanor's cheeks flushed crimson, her eyes welling with tears she refused to let fall, as the judge's laughter lingered, a mocking echo that stripped her bare before strangers. Outside the heavy oak doors, the afternoon sun beat down on cracked asphalt, where a convoy unlike any the small town had seen rumbled to a halt. Chrome gleamed under the relentless light, engines growling like awakened beasts, as 24 bikers dismounted their Harleys with the precision of a military drill. Led by Big Jack, Thunder, Malone, a towering figure with a salt and pepper beard and tattoos mapping a life of roads less traveled, this was the Iron Vipers Motorcycle Club, not the outlaws of legend, but a brotherhood forged in quiet acts of defiance against injustice. Jack had met Eleanor months earlier at a roadside diner, where she'd served him coffee with a smile despite her grief-stricken eyes. Over pie and confessions, she'd shared her woes, and he'd promised the club would have her back if it came to that. Now, as the gavel's distant thud signaled the hearing's crescendo, the bikers straightened their leather vests, emblazoned with a coiled serpent and the motto, "Ride for the Fallen," and strode toward the courthouse steps, their boots thudding in unison like war drums. Inside, the air grew thicker as Judge Thorpe continued his verbal dissection, dismissing Eleanor's evidence as amateur sleight of hand, and suggesting she seek charity instead of the law. The widow stood frozen, her envelope crumpling in her fist, the weight of humiliation pressing down like an unseen hand. The bailiff shifted nervously, sensing the room's tension coiling tighter, while the insurance attorney smirked from his table, victory tasting sweet before the verdict. It was then that the doors burst open with a force that rattled the benches, a gust of leather, sweat, and resolve sweeping in like a storm front. The bikers filled the aisle, their presence a wall of muscle and machinery, eyes locked forward with unyielding purpose. Gasps erupted from the spectators, the judge's laughter died mid-breath, replaced by a sputter of indignation as he slammed his gavel, demanding order. But the Vipers didn't flinch, they moved as one, parting only to let Eleanor glimpse their support, her shock melting into a flicker of hope amid the chaos. Big Jack stepped forward first, his voice a gravelly baritone that commanded silence without raising its pitch. "Your Honor," he began, removing his aviator shades to reveal eyes hardened by loss, eyes that had seen brothers fall on foreign sands and friends fade in hospital beds, "we're here for Mrs. Hayes. Not to disrupt, but to testify to her character and the truth she's fighting for." The judge's face purpled, his jowls quivering as he barked for the sheriff, but the bikers, sheer number, flanking the walls like sentinels, stayed any rash moves. One by one, they took the stand, uninvited but unchallenged in the stunned hush, tales of Eleanor's kindness at the diner, how she'd covered tabs for down on their luck riders, shared stories of her husband's service in the forgotten wars that mirrored their own scars. The insurance lawyer objected furiously, but Thorpe, cornered by the unexpected tide, could only pound his gavel in futile rhythm. His earlier mirth evaporated like morning dew. As the afternoon wore on, the courtroom transformed from a stage of scorn to a forum of reckoning. A viper named Razor, his arms a canvas of faded ink from Vietnam tours, recounted pulling over to help Eleanor change a flat tire on a rain-lashed night, her gratitude a balm to his haunted nights. Another, Lena Sparks Ruiz, the club's lone female patch holder with a mechanic's grease under her nails, spoke of teaching Eleanor basic bike maintenance in exchange for home-cooked meals that fed the whole crew during lean times. Their words wove a tapestry of community, painting the widow not as a beggar but as a pillar who'd quietly upheld the club's unspoken code, protect your own. Judge Thorpe fidgeted, his robe suddenly ill-fitting, as character witnesses multiplied, each testimony chipping away at his preconceptions. The gallery, once apathetic, leaned in, whispers turning to nods of approval. Even the court reporter's pen scratched faster, capturing the shift from mockery to might. By the time the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the barred windows, the momentum had irrevocably turned. The insurance attorney, sweat beading on his brow, scrambled to counter with legalese, but it rang hollow against the raw authenticity of the bikers' accounts. Eleanor, bolstered by the sea of leather-clad allies, found her voice again, presenting the policy with renewed clarity, her hands steady now. Judge Thorpe called a recess, retreating to chambers with a scowl, but the vipers waited like patient guardians, sharing quiet words with Eleanor, promises of rides to the beach, barbecues under starlit skies, a family she'd never known she had. When court resumed, the judge's tone had softened, edged with reluctance. He reviewed the evidence afresh, the bikers' presence a silent jury of conscience. Objections overruled, testimonies weighed, and in a ruling that stunned the room, Thorpe granted the claim in full, his voice clipped as if the words burned his tongue. The gavel fell one final time, not in judgment but in justice served, and the courtroom erupted in restrained applause. The vipers' cheers a low rumble of triumph. Eleanor collapsed into Jack's bare hug, tears flowing freely now, not of shame but release, as the club encircled her like a living shield. The insurance lawyer slunk out, tail between legs, while spectators filed past with handshakes and murmurs of, "Well done." Judge Thorpe adjourned abruptly, avoiding eyes that now saw through his facade, his laughter a ghost banished by the roar of righteousness. Outside, engines fired up in salute, a thunderous ovation that shook the courthouse foundations, carrying Eleanor on a chopper sidecar back to her street, where neighbors peeked from curtains in awe. That night, around a bonfire crackling with sparks, the vipers toasted the widow who'd reminded them why they rode. Not for glory, but for the forgotten fights worth winning. Word of the biker verdict spread like wildfire through the town's sleepy veins, igniting conversations in diners and barbershops alike. Local news vans arrived too late for the drama but captured Eleanor's radiant smile astride a gleaming softail, wind-whipping her silver hair as the club escorted her home. The story went viral, memes of judges mid-laugh juxtaposed with viper silhouettes, a modern parable of underdogs and unlikely heroes. Judge Thorpe faced quiet scrutiny from higher courts, his caseload reviewed for biases long overlooked, a humbling that forced introspection in the mirror of public gaze. For Eleanor, the payout secured her home and a nest egg for quiet travels, perhaps tracing her husband's old roots on the back of a bike, with Jack at the throttle. The Iron Vipers gained not infamy but admiration, invitations pouring in for charity runs and school talks on brotherhood beyond blood. In the end, what began as a solitary widow's plea echoed as a chorus of solidarity, proving that justice, though often deaf to the meek, could roar when the mighty lent their voice. Eleanor's laughter, once silenced by loss, now mingled with the club's rowdy jests around grease-stained tables, a melody of mended hearts. Judge Thorpe, in rare candor during a later interview, admitted the event, recalibrated his compass, vowing fairer hearings for the voiceless. The bikers rode on, horizons calling, but with a new patch sewn beside the serpent, for Eleanor, a talisman against complacency. And in that small town's transformed square, where statues of stern founders gathered dust, folks whispered of the day leather's outshone robes, reminding all that true power lies not in gavels or engines, but in standing unyieldingly for one another, until the very walls of wrong trembled and fell.